And there's a philosophy, though, because Campbell doesn't have a special teams coordinator, a special teams coach. Some coaches do, some coaches don't. I think you're an exhibit of why you need them. Am I wrong there?
Okay, which is something, speak to that, because that was a question I wanted to ask. You have models where it's like, well, we'll do this as sort of by committee versus having that coordinator. Your thoughts, because it was by committee before you and it was by coordinator with you, at least in my understanding. Now, I understand you can't have like one special teams coordinator and he's doing everything. The other guys are still taking part. I get that. But can you do it successfully without a dedicated special teams coordinator in this day and age?
In my opinion, it'd be very hard. I'd always want to have the coordinator because it just makes it your deal. And I know it's by – and also the other thing too is that your name's on it. Sometimes it's by committee. Very rarely it is like, well, we want to talk to the punt coach. We have some questions for the kickoff return coach. It's like, no, you want to have one person because then you have true guidance of when every meeting starts, he's the one that's up in front. He's the one that's going to handle this phase of it, and then everyone else jumps into it. And so you have to be a dominant personality, in my opinion, to be in that spot. Your level of knowledge got to be very high. You have to have a lot of energy, and it's your job to tie the team together. And the biggest part of it is to get the offensive guys productive, which means receivers and running backs covering kickoffs. Different than the things, which is always that people always talk about it, but is it happening? And so I think it's so important to have a coordinator that so he can cross over with the entire team. There's other ways to do it, and some people have some success, but you want to have the one guy that has that part in it that runs the whole thing.
Biggest change when you go from the 21 to the 22 season. Biggest change that you felt needed to be made, or if it's like a top three, fine. What was the biggest change or biggest changes that had to be made when you go from 21 to 22? Because like I said, I mean, we looked at the numbers. Those numbers are impressive. When you look at that change from 21 to 22 at Nebraska and in special teams, when you came in as that coordinator and said, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this, what were the 1, 2, 3 biggest things you made that you feel like had the biggest impact?
Well, the thing that started off with, I said, was obviously having, the one coordinator, which at that time was me. I think that was a plus. I know when the question was asked, how are you going to change it? And I said, well, we're going to get a new punter, we're going to get a new snapper, we're going to get a new kicker. That's how we're going to change it first, because you want it to. In the end, sometimes things aren't great, but if you punt the ball well and you kick the ball well, your things are usually pretty good.
Iowa sells T-shirts that say punting is winning. Yeah, because Tory Taylor's a hell of a punter, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's what I mean. Yeah, so that's a.
Every year I played it down in Lincoln, we had Mike Stiggy was a very good punter. Byron Bennett, one of the most underrated punters
Darren
I've ever
Erstad,
seen.
pretty damn good punter.
Erstad, All-American punter.
There were so many good ones, and so that was my first way to change. Okay, how are you going to change this? We're going to do this. So I went and recruited Brian Buschini from Montana, made us much better. Got a long snapper that came in from Georgetown that did a great job for us right there. Brady Weiss came in at that. And then I recruited Timmy to come in from Furman. And so had 3 new guys come at that, and they all performed very well. I mean, Timmy missed maybe 1 or 2, but our percentages, if you look at the numbers, we went way up from where we were. We went way up in punting. We did all those little things, and then able to really tie in all the LRPs, and those are the limited role players. And so you want to build some guys that just Lance Gray would be an LRP.
He was a missile.
So maybe he didn't play a lot, but he had a.
I'm not sure he wanted to call him a limited role.
When I say limited role means his snaps. He didn't get a lot of snaps on defense. There was a lot of snaps.
He did not.
So limited role means he has a role on the team.
The guy almost made an NFL roster as a special teams bomber.
Yeah. And so when you could get a few of those together, you still have to have your talented guys, like that. Corey Dixon was our punt returner when you were there.
Yeah.
So get a really good guy back there. Get a guys in the right spots. You have to have you still have to be able to have your stars and your players playing in certain spots. Like punt team, that's invitation only. That's if you looked at our punt team last year up front, it's Reimer, Garrett, it's all starters across. If they're our very, very best, you don't jack around with punt team. That's not a place it's kind of like if you're always going to rest.
It's like the country club. Yeah, you're invitation only.
Invitation only. You get when you get asked, you're asked to be part of this one like that.
See, I'm thinking about the punt block that Iowa had against Nebraska, and that was 21.
That was 21.
My oldest daughter and I were at that game, and I mean, just that ended the game.
It did.
Iowa scored, and Nebraska was still up by a touchdown, and the entire stadium knew we lost that game on that play.
Those plays can jump on you.
It does. I mean,
so our kids did. They just responded this year. They were very into what was going on, and so I enjoyed that, a lot, to have a chance to be able to coach those guys. And then,
do you think what you just said right there, where you had a group of guys where you're talking about player investment there, where the players themselves feel like they've got an investment in special teams, that's got to circle back to having the dedicated coordinator. I would think
when one person runs it, and that's a tough meeting now. The special teams meeting is a tough meeting because that was the lead meeting at 7:00. That's the lead meeting at 7:00. So you're starting off before you go to individual meetings. Anything you do, it's a 7 a.m. meeting, and you got 80 guys in there, and you have to make sure that boom, we would buzz the locker room, do this. I always had music on in the team room when they came in. A lot of energy. I'd meet them at the door when they were coming up to have. So we knew this meeting was going to. So that was a big thing about we're going to have successful by one thing. We're going to have a great meeting. Everybody clear? Everybody understand that this meeting is going to be a great meeting on what we're going to get done today. And we sat in certain areas. There were certain ways we sat, how we sat in our chairs. Everything we did was detailed out so that they knew. And they knew it also was going to be crisp. It's going to be on this time frame. It's going to be this, this, and this. And in about 18 minutes, this meeting's over. But it was 18 minutes of as hard as you can go to get our stuff done. And then we went to practice. One of the things so I always said transition was part of the drill, which meant that when the horn blows, I want people flying. Well, we would do a stretch at the beginning, then we'd do the little jumping jack thing, and then boom, horn would blow. Well, I always had the first 10 minutes. A lot of times we were outside, set up outside. And so I said, transition's part of this. So I'd be on there. We're running. And so I thought it was just okay. Really simple. We just activated the cameras. So we had them on the inside, I had them on the outside. So then we filmed. So the next day I'd be like, all right, transition's part of the drill. And I just pointed out, how about this? How about this? How about this? And then the next day, put it on. Transition was ridiculous because they were getting filmed every day. So everything had an aspect to it of importance. It was really important to how fast we can get to our drill. Then I would show people in drill work, you'd show them injured people that were really good. All of a sudden it'd be like, say it was a Travis Vokalak and he was out for that particular week or may not be able to play in that game and he wouldn't be getting a rep in the shield. Then the shield drill, he'd be right behind him doing his footwork. And the same way at the front line, right? So the only way to motivate people is to find someone doing something good and reward it. So when they're doing that, I'd stop and I'd circle it. And the next day in practice, I'm like, hey, look at our starting right guard. I said that right now is 50-50 if he plays. Look what he's doing. He's not this. He's lined up in his football stance. He's taking his footwork drill. And then guess what? Once they all caught on to that, then it was ridiculous. So we always had effort clips from each day. And then every day I would always pull out players that were not probably going to travel or play that game that were busting their ass. And I'd say, okay, this is so-and-so right here. Right now, he's probably not getting on the plane to Rutgers. Look at his effort. And I'd always say everyone's getting watched. So when you know you're getting watched like that, then that always makes a difference. If you know that the coach watched you, if all of a sudden you were a redshirt freshman and he brought in a clip of you on scout team, and he said if Dan Young said, hey, I watched this play on scout team, this is really good. How do you think you'd practice that day, the next day?
Oh, you've got investment then.
Yeah, then all of a sudden
the
coach is watching me.
Yeah,
if the coach actually, if you're not watching them,
yeah,
if you're not watching them, you're not paying attention to that stuff, then you lose it. But with someone, you give them one little thing, and I bet we talked about 40 guys that probably didn't play, but they got noticed all the time. And guess how you think they practiced that day when they went back out? Really good. They're always on there. And then I'd use teachable moments. I'd say, okay, instead of being too harsh, I'd be like, teachable moment, this isn't us. This isn't us. And then your room runs that. Then you have the veteran guys, the days of people always say, when like teammates and somebody grabs someone by the face mask, those days are over. That just doesn't happen. Players, you don't see players doing that much with other players. So you got to be able to lead it in some fashion.
We lived by that.
Yeah. That doesn't exist very much anymore. But accountability still exists. Don't get me wrong. There's accountability.